Hello students, today we will be discussing about socio-economic analysis. In that, we will look at analysis of social relations of economic life. Most rural societies are relatively integrated in the sense that the various components of life, example agricultural and non-agricultural, economic, social and political, religious and secular are closely interrelated. Most people in rural areas are dependent directly or indirectly on the natural resources of the area for their livelihood. There is intricate nature of the relationship between the people and their environment, which has evolved over centuries and is reflected in all aspects of life, not merely those directly related to agricultural production. Thus, the socio-economic analysis of communities is much dependent on the availability and accessibility of natural resources and also the human resources to maximize the utilization of natural resources. In this context, it is pertinent to mention the term factors of production, which comes from an economic phrase describing resources, inputs, which are used to produce goods and services, outputs. These factors are also known as productive inputs. Common definitions of factors of production of farms include at least the factors of land, labor, and capital. Apart from these three, the fourth factor that we consider to be important for understanding farming systems is knowledge. This refers to the farm's land base, whether it is in one field or divided into different parcels, as well as its agricultural qualities. Example, topography, altitude, soil type, and natural water and nutrient cycles. All of these characteristics set limits on farming activities. Example, number and size of livestock that can take place on farm. Capital is often defined in terms of the 5 capitals, that is human, natural, social, financial and physical or manufactured, which are also referred in the Sustainable Livelihoods framework. In simple terms, capital refers to cash available or things that can be sold for cash. In many rural societies, savings are in the form of cattle or other livestock that can be sold in times of emergency. Capital is also available from local credit systems, formal and informal. The possibility for farmers to raise capital depends on many aspects on the farm. For instance, having good storage facilities, diversity and quality of farm products and services, possibilities for adding value, as well as access to markets. Labor can be looked at in terms of hours or number of laborers needed to get the farm work carried out. For example, some crops are more labor intensive than others. Example, horticultural crops as compared to cereal crops. The number of laborers available can affect whether peak activities can be done and on time. For example, late preparation, sowing, weeding or harvesting can have an adverse effect on yield. The management of labor, the farm equipment available, as well as the use of draught animals and mechanization greatly affects farm activities and the quality and quantity of production. The division of labor is another important issue in farming. In many societies, certain tasks are considered to be male or female tasks, and there can also be gender division on who can make decisions about those tasks. Knowledge can be described as the result of perceptions, learning and reason. Farmers' knowledge as well as their skills is constantly being renewed as farmers adapt their practices to changing conditions or because of new insights and learning. These can come from their own observations or from information from elsewhere, such as from other farmers, from older generations, from schooling, from media such as radio, print, or internet-based resources, from research and extension, as well as from traders and salespeople. A farm can therefore be looked at as a system of resource flows in, through and out of the farm. Central to the farm is a farmer family with particular views and action perspectives managing the farm's resources. This they do by making the most of the possibilities that their capital, land, labor and knowledge offer them. Farmers use technology to make advances in producing more food for a growing world. Through the use of technology, each farmer is able to feed 155 people today compared to 1940 when one farmer could feed only 19 people. Farmers use technologies such as motorized equipment, modified housing for animals and biotechnology, which allow for improvement in agriculture. New agrarian technology. Growing use of high-yielding varieties of seed, chemical fertilizers, pesticides to meet the demand can be seen. Now a farmer can cultivate on more than 2 acres of land with less labor. The use of planters and harvesters makes the process so easy. In agriculture, time and production are so important. You have to plant in time, harvest in time and deliver to stores in time. Modern transportation technology facilities help farmers easily transport fertilizers or other farm products to their farms, and it also speeds the supply of agricultural products from farms to the markets where consumers get them on a daily basis. The price of these feed is fair so that a low-income farmer can afford them. Most of these manufactured animal feeds have extra nutrition which improve on the animal's health, and the output of these animals will also increase. Land with permanent heritable possession with or without right to transfer the title was considered as owned land. The land held in owner-like possession under a long-term lease or assignment. Example, village land possessed by a tribal household as per traditional tribal rights, or community land customarily operated by a tenant for a long period, was also treated as land owned. A household ownership holding includes all plots of land owned by any member of the household, whether the land is cultivatable or not. India is a land of small farmers. The small holding character of Indian agriculture is much more prominent today than even before. The average size of holdings in India declined from 2.3 hectares in 1970-71 to 1.33 hectares in 2000-2001. It may be noted that 63% of land holdings belong to marginal farmers with less than 1 hectare. The average size of marginal holdings is only 0.24 at all Indian level. The average size of small holdings is 1.42 hectares. The access to irrigation has increased for all categories of farmers. It is the highest for marginal farmers, followed by small farmers. It may, however, be noted that large farmers capitalize on cheaper sources like canals, while small farmers have to rent water. About 40% of the irrigated hour for large farmers was from canals, while it was less than 25% in the case of small and marginal farmers. The fertilizer per hectare is inversely related to farm size for both irrigated and unirrigated areas. Similarly, the percentage of area under high yielding varieties is also inversely related to farm size. Multiple cropping index is higher for marginal and small farmers than that for medium and large farmers. It is observed that small and marginal farmers allocate larger proportion of their cultivated land to high value crops like fruits and vegetables. Small and marginal farmers allocate larger proportion of rice and wheat than other farmers. Small and marginal farmers allocate lower proportion of land to pulses and oilseeds. The contribution to output is higher for marginal and small farmers as compared to their share in area. In terms of production, small and marginal farmers also make larger contribution to the production of high value crops. They contribute around 70% to the total production of vegetables, 55% to fruits against their share of 44% in land area. Their share in cereal production is 52% and 69% in milk production. Thus, small farmers contribute to both diversification and food security. Only in the cases of pulses and oilseeds, their share is lower than the other farmers. Small holdings need credit for both consumption and investment purposes. The indebtedness for the small and marginal farmers from former institutional sources is lower than large farmers, and the reverse is true in case of informal sources. The dependence on money lenders is the highest for submarginal and marginal farmers. The share of formal source increases with the size of land. At all India level, the share of formal source varies from 22.6% to 58% for small and marginal farmers, while it varies from 65 to 68% for medium to large farmers. Dependence of small and marginal farmers on informal sources is high even in states like Andhra Pradesh, Punjab and Tamil Nadu. Women work extensively in production of major grains and millets in land preparation, seed selection and seedling production, sowing, applying manure, weeding, transplanting, threshing, winnowing and harvesting in livestock production, fish processing, etc. Women prepare cooking fuel by mixing dung with twigs and crop residue. In animal husbandry, women have multiple roles ranging from animal care, grazing, fodder collection and cleaning of animal sheds to processing of milk and livestock products. Despite women's vital contribution to agriculture and allied sectors in India, they lack control over productive assets such as land, livestock, technologies, credit, finance and markets, face biases due to socio-cultural practices and experience gender differentials in agricultural wages. It refers to the cost of various inputs and input services used for raising a particular crop. It includes all the operations from land preparation to threshing, cleaning and taking the product from the field to home. Cost of cultivation always refers to unit area, that is acre or hectare. It refers to the cost of various inputs and input services used to produce a unit quantity of output of a commodity. The resources whose use remain the same regardless of the level of production are called fixed resources. Volume of output does not directly depend upon these resources. Costs corresponding to these resources are known as fixed costs. Fixed resources exist only in the short run, and in the long run they are zero. Example: land, machinery, farm buildings, equipment, implement, livestock, etc. The resources whose use vary with the level of production are known as variable resources. Volume of output directly depends on these resources. Costs corresponding to these resources are known as variable costs. Variable resources exist both in the short run and in the long run. Seeds, fertilizers, plant protection chemicals, FYM, feeds, medicines, etc. are examples of variable resources. Flow resources. There are some resources which should be used as and when they are available. They cannot be stored or stocked for a future use. Services are forthcoming like a flow. Examples are labor, sunshine, land, farm buildings, machinery, equipment, etc. The resources which are not used in one period of production can be stored for a later period. Examples are seeds, fertilizers, feeds, manures, plant protection chemicals, etc. Some factors of production are both flow and stock services. Whether a service should be defined as a flow or stock depends on the length of the time period under consideration. Examples are land, machinery, buildings, etc. A building lasts for 50 years provides a flow of services in each of the individual years. Still, it provides a stock of services for 50 years period. Similarly, a tractor gives flow of services for each year but a stock service over 10 years. The distribution of national income in India totally remained unequal, although its volume has grown sizably, more particularly during the last 2 decades. Rather, with this growth of national income over the last 2 decades, inequality in the distribution of personal income has been accentuated. Moreover, the top 50% of the urban population enjoyed about 75% of the aggregate income, while the remaining bottom 50% of the urban population enjoyed only 25% of the income, leading to a situation where few rich become richer and a few poor become poorer. Considering this income inequalities, the Mahalanobis Committee concluded the wider range of variation that one finds between the top and the bottom tenths of the population clearly reveals the existence of concentration of economic power in the country in its most generalized form. The two main reasons for this unequal distribution of income are, firstly, widespread unemployment and underemployment in India has resulted in a low productivity per unit of labor, and that is considered as the most important responsible factor for low levels of income and living of large masses of people. Secondly, heavy concentration of income and wealth in the possession of few people has resulted from widespread tax evasion. The National Council of Applied Economic Research has also made an in-depth study of the problem of inequality in the distribution of national income at 2 points of time, that is, one in 1960 and the other in 1962. Later on, the Council conducted another All India Household Survey of Income, Savings and Consumer Expenditure in the year 1967-68. The report of the Council revealed that the bottom 20% of the rural households earned nearly 5% of the total disposable income in 1962, and then the same share slightly declined to 4.8% in 1967-68. But the share of the top 20% of the rural household was about 48% in 1962, and then the same share finally increased to 53% in 1967-68. Rich farmers in India had received much advantage from the new agricultural strategy, that is, Green Revolution, and in the absence of suitable income tax net in the rural areas, widespread tax evasion raised the degree of inequality in the disposable income to a considerable extent. The inequality of income between the rural and urban areas draws people away from agricultural production and places great stress upon the infrastructure and social services of a country's towns and cities. In recent years, the problem of inequality in the distribution of income and wealth has gained much more importance in India. In the meantime, different estimates of personal income distribution have been prepared by the Reserve Bank of India. The top 50% of the rural population has 69% of the income, while the bottom 50% has enjoyed only 31% of the total income. Again, in the urban areas, top 5% of the urban population enjoyed about 26% of the total income, while the bottom 20% of the urban population received only 7% of the aggregate income of the country. India ranked second worldwide in the farm output. Agriculture and allied sectors like forestry, logging and fishing accounted for 17% of the GDP and employed 49% of the total workforce in 2014. As the Indian economy has diversified and grown, agriculture's contribution to GDP has steadily declined from 1951 to 2011. Yet, it is still the largest employment source and a significant piece of the overall socio-economic development of India. Crop yield per unit area of all crops has grown since 1950 due to the special emphasis placed on agriculture in the 5-year plans and steady improvements in irrigation technology, application of modern agricultural practices and provision of agricultural credit and subsidies since the Green Revolution in India. However, international comparisons reveal the average yield in India is generally 30% to 50% of the highest average yield in the world. The states of Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Haryana, Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Bihar, West Bengal, Gujarat and Maharashtra are key contributors to Indian agriculture. Industry. Industry accounts for 26% of GDP and employs 22% of the total workforce. According to the World Bank, India's industrial manufacturing GDP output in 2015 was 6th largest in the world on current US dollar basis. The Indian industrial sector underwent significant changes as a result of the economic liberalization in India economic reforms of 1991. Which removed import restrictions, brought in foreign competition, led to the privatization of certain government-owned public sector industries, liberalized the foreign direct investment regime, improved infrastructure, and led to an expansion in the production of fast-moving consumer goods. Post-liberalization, the Indian private sector was faced with increasing domestic as well as foreign competition, including the threat of cheaper Chinese imports. It has since handled the change by squeezing costs, revamping management, and relying on cheap labor and new technology. However, this has also reduced employment generation even by smaller manufacturers who earlier relied on a relatively labor-intensive processes. Services. India's service sector has the largest share in the GDP, accounting for 57% in 2012, up from 15% in 1950. It is the 7th largest in the world by nominal GDP and 3rd largest when purchasing power is taken into account. The services sector provides employment to 27% of the workforce. Information technology and business process outsourcing are among the fastest growing sectors, having a cumulative growth rate of revenue 33.6% between 1997 and 1998 and 2002 and 2003, and contributing to 25% of country's total exports in 2007-2008. The growth in the IT sector is attributed to increased specialization and an availability of a large pool of low-cost, highly skilled, educated and fluent English-speaking workers on the supply side, matched on the demand side by the increased demand from foreign consumers interested in India's service exports or those looking to outsource their operations. The share of the Indian IT industry in the country's GDP increased from 4.8% in 2005-2006 to 7% in 2008. In 2009, 7 Indian firms were listed among the top 15 technology outsourcing companies in the world. The economy of India is the 7th largest economy in the world measured by the nominal GDP and the 3rd largest by purchasing power parity. The country is classified as a newly industrialized country, one of the G20 major economies, a member of BRICS and a developing economy with an average growth rate of approximately 7% over the last 2 decades. Maharashtra is the wealthiest Indian state and has an annual nominal GDP of 250 billion US dollars, nearly equal to that of Portugal and Pakistan, and accounts for 12% of the Indian GDP, followed by the states of Tamil Nadu 150 billion US dollars and Uttar Pradesh 130 billion US dollars. India's economy became the world's fastest growing major economy in the last quarter of 2014, replacing the People's Republic of China. The long-term growth perspective of the Indian economy is positive due to its young population, corresponding low dependency ratio, healthy savings and investment rates, and increasing integration into the global economy. The Indian economy has the potential to become the world's third largest economy by the next decade and one of the two largest economies by mid-century. And the outlook for short-term growth is also good, as according to the International Monetary Fund, the Indian economy is the bright spot in the global landscape. India also topped the World Bank's growth outlook for 2015-16 for the first time, with the economy having grown 7.6% in 2015-16 and expected to grow 8% plus in 2016-17. So students, this is the end of the session. Do you have any doubts?
Ma'am, can you please explain one more time how technology acts as factor for production?
Farmers use technology to make advances in producing more food for growing world. Through the use of technology, each farmer is able to feed 155 people today compared to 1940, when one farmer could feed only 19 people. Farmers use technologies such as motorized equipment, modified housing for animals and biotechnology, which allow for improvement in agriculture. Any more questions? So students, we conclude our session. Thank you.